One.
Well met. This has been Broad, and you're watching Born to be
Cosmo.
Oh, snap.
Cosmo.
Welcome to another episode of Born to be Cosmo, the show where we talk all things Marvel Snap. You might notice I am giving the intro this time, unlike our normal intro from Blutrane. He's out sick this week. We're wishing him a speedy recovery. But in his place, we have a special guest, Joe from Snap Decisions. So that should be fun. Welcome to the show, Joe. Good to see you, Nate.
Hey.
It's been a little bit since
What's
we've
up?
been here. And yeah, I'm excited to talk Snap stuff. A lot of stuff has happened in the past month. We got some exciting stuff coming up this week with Snap Packs. There's an OTA. We just had an event end. A lot of stuff going on. So a lot of stuff for us to get caught up on and talk about. And I'm looking forward to doing it. So
Right? Yeah,
I guess,
sorry everybody. It's been about a month since our last show a little bit. Everything has been a little crazy. I had some computer issues since last time. But I'm back on a new build, a brand new SSD, Windows 11 installed, and hopefully everything sounds okay. I may have to tweak my audio settings for the next episode, but excited to be back. So yeah, I don't think we're not going to cover everything from the past month because there's just too much. But we, like Zombies was saying, High Voltage just ended. We've got a couple new cards. Some are better than others to talk about. We just had an OTA like last week, so we can talk about that. And yeah, very special guest, Joe. Very happy to have you with us tonight. So yeah, welcome aboard again.
Thank you. I've been a long time listener of the show, and I'm very happy to be here. There is a lot of stuff going on in Snap. Obviously, Tuesday, big day for the game all together, and so I'm looking forward to that. And just chatting with you guys about Snap and the things that have gone on over the past week. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So I guess let's just dive on in. What did we want to start with? Were we going to start with the OTA?
Sure.
Did I
Yeah,
have
let's
that
do it.
right?
Sounds good.
All right. It was an impactful one. It was we were talking about this before we went live a little bit. But the last few OTAs, in my opinion at least, and definitely not just my opinion, I've seen a lot of commentary and comments about it too, have been a little bit, on the safer side. Statistically, we've been in a relatively balanced metagame, and so they didn't want to do a whole lot of shakeups. There were small nerfs, small buffs here or there. But I know like the one before this, it was literally all +1 or -1 power, and personally, I found that to be a bit lacking in terms of like what I really like about OTAs.
It was a snooze fest. Like,
Yeah, it's just I think OTAs are one of the strongest things Snap does to set itself apart from other card games and how they handle balance. And so, especially on like the content creation side, when an OTA is coming up, I'm getting excited about something new to do, especially in a metagame where it's like the metagame may be fairly balanced, but I feel like I played so many of the decks. Some of them have been around for a long time. I want some exciting new stuff to do, especially when some of the earlier cards of the month weren't the most impactful or super exciting. So OTAs can kind of help bring some of that needed excitement. And the last few before this one were a little bit like, I think on the safe/boring side. But I feel like this OTA, they kind of heard that feedback a bit, and they made it a bit more eventful. And this was, I think, a good time to do it, because if you don't know, normally OTAs are every 2 weeks, but they are taking the next normally scheduled one off. They're doing, I think, like a in-person company retreat visit type thing that they do once or twice a year. So they announced that on the Discord. So no OTA in 2 weeks. The next one will be towards the end of next month. So the end of May. But so there's, I think, a little bit more pressure there to have a OTA that was more exciting, especially if you're going to not have them be at that regularly 2 week scheduled interval. And this one, I think, was much more exciting and interesting than some of the last ones. So let's talk about it. First up,
they hit season
Sam
pass
Wilson.
cards like same month.
Yeah. So it's been
Yes.
it's been a long time since they've had to buff a season pass card. It's been a very long time. I think the last pass card they buffed might have been Symbiote Spider-Man, if I'm not incorrect here. Like I think that was the last one they actually had to buff from the season pass. I think that happened like right after he left his pass, or maybe right before. But the last 6 months or so, we've had some very powerful season pass cards, and
Yeah.
Captain Carter was a departure from that, to say the least. And there was a lot of talk about that. I made a video about it. I think KM had one. And I think one interesting point that got brought up a lot was I don't think people mind them not necessarily having every pass card be super meta defining, but Captain Carter really was just pretty below the bar of being like worth the effort of deck building around her. Like the juice wasn't worth the squeeze of playing the card a lot of the time. And so I made the prediction on, I think, the first day of the season that this card was going to get buffed before the season ended. And well, it happened. It didn't happen how I thought it would. I thought they were going to tread a little lightly. I thought they were going to make her a 4/4 and see what happens, and then go from there. But no, they swung for the fences because of, I'm assuming, that longer absence between the OTAs, and taking her from a 4/3 to a 3/2. And I mean, out of all the changes we have here to talk about, this is probably the one that has had the biggest impact on the game. So have you guys been seeing too much of the new card, or have you played with it much? What do you think about it?
You know, I mean, I've seen a lot of it, that's for sure. Part of it, I think, is that so I'm still in the like well, I was in the like mid to low 90s, and now I'm back in the high 80s. So it's embarrassing to say, but there it is. Thanos mirrors like left and right, and because the ongoing version is so strong, like Captain Carter's in that, Sam Wilson's in that, like, and so I've been seeing a ton of it. Being able to play it a turn earlier is impactful for sure. So yeah, definitely.
What about you, Joe? How have you been feeling with the new Carter?
Yeah, same here. I've seen her a lot more for sure. Just playing against it, it seems like she fit into that Thanos ongoing list pretty easily. I end up seeing it quite a bit there. And yeah, look, I always kind of thought that the card with its cost was going to be a problem because getting her out on turn 4, it doesn't make for you having much room to play her. And a lot of times, you know, you put those cards in your lanes, especially if you're playing a bigger deck the way it is like Thanos, you're already going to have those 2 top cards most of the time filled in on most of the lanes. So it was very hard to wait around for the card. But yeah, I think it's perfect now the way it is. I think it's definitely a better card. It definitely adds to the ongoing lists for sure. And it makes for a really big lane, albeit the fact that it's also a big enchantress target,
Mhm.
which now you're starting to see a lot more enchantress being played. But yeah, no, I love the change. I think, you know, to your point, zombies, it was a very weak season pass card, and one of the weakest we've seen in quite a while. And if they had just left it the way it is, I would have been kind of surprised. But I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see. There's definitely been a resurgence in surfer decks too, because now 3 cost gets the surfer. But I completely agree with your point that at 4 cost it was pretty clunky, because a lot of times you would fill up those front 2 rows in the early game, and
Yeah.
if you didn't, you know, you're taking your turn 4 to play her in a lane you haven't developed a bunch into, and so in order for you to get that value out of the card, you would have to commit a lot more resources, and you'd only have 2 more turns to do that, turn 5 and turn 6, unless you got her out early with like a Psylocke or Zabu, but that's not as consistent. So I think 4 costs just made the card pretty clunky. I was conflicted about the change when I first read it, mainly because they're taking the mid-month OTA off. I was worried that if this change was too strong, like I really like them going for a big swing like this, but I think one of the benefits of going for a big swing like this is, well, if you're doing changes every 2 weeks, if you make it a little bit too strong, you can pretty quickly correct that if it needs correcting.
Yeah.
So I was a little scared that they did this right before like a month between OTAs, but so far in playing with the card and against the card, so I don't really feel like that's what happened. I feel like it's very good, especially with Moonstone, probably the best card to pair with it, even better than Surfer, because Moonstone getting that ability with her 6 power is rather strong. But like Joe mentioned, there's a lot more Enchantress going around. I'm seeing a little bit more Red Guardian again, as a possible way of dealing with it. So it doesn't feel like it has completely taken over the game, which is what I was a little worried about when I first read the change. I was worried it might put us in a situation where it's like, oh, now you have to either play Carter or make sure you're playing a counter. But it looks like so far the metagame has adapted a bit to where it's being played a lot more. It's a rather solid card, but I don't feel like it's a situation where you're at a severe disadvantage if you're not either playing Carter or running a thing to counter it. It feels like it's slot into the metagame pretty nicely. It's given a boost to the more dedicated ongoing decks outside of Thanos, which is cool to see. I think Thanos is probably still the best one, but it is nice to see some support there, and it is fun seeing all the different Surfer lists trying her out.
Yeah.
So I think that was definitely a pretty big win for the patch, and I think it's a tricky thing to balance season pass cards. Because we have just had like a generational run of season pass cards. The last 6 months of pass cards have all been strong meta defining cards. And I think it's okay for a pass card to be a little bit more middling. But even if a card is more middling, I think you want it to serve like a very clear role and add something different to the game, because the pass cards are the ones that are, I think, a lot more accessible than the regular like Spotlight Week cards.
Mhm.
They just get played a lot more because a lot of people pick up the season pass because it's the best $10 you can spend on the game relative to other stuff. So I'm really happy that as someone who got put off from Carter pretty quickly in her initial release, I'm pretty happy to see how this has turned out, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that kind of develops. We did have some very light nerfs here as well to Sam Wilson and Scream, both taking a point of power. So Sam's a 2/2, Scream's a 2/1. This does not surprise me very much. Sam Wilson was kind of the undisputed best 2-drop in the game, and very strong. I think very fun. The Sam is I think a perfect example of a really powerful card that I think for the most part doesn't really get a whole lot of hate. Like it doesn't feel like super overwhelming or super oppressive to a lot of people, and it felt very fun to play. Like comparing, the card that came right before him in Iron Patriot, I think that one received a lot more flack, even though statistically Sam was the stronger card, just because of like the different way the gameplay plays out with those cards. So I'm not surprised to see Sam take a little hit here. He's still very good. If you had a deck playing Sam Wilson before the patch, you're probably still playing with him now.
Yeah.
And it's a very minor nerf, but I think that is just fine. And you can say kind of the same thing for Scream. Scream decks have been good for a while. They even addressed in the OTA notes that Scream has been really, really good, even though it hasn't had the highest play rate, which always kind of surprises me how low the play rate is relative to the power of the deck. But she also took a 1 point here, which has made her a little bit more susceptible to Red Guardian. But again, much like Sam, if you had a deck playing Scream before the patch, it's probably still playing Scream because she's still a very powerful card that's worth building your whole deck around. So,
Yeah.
Given the statistically things are relatively balanced, I don't mind seeing like more minor adjustments here in the nerf department and having a patch that's more buff focused. That's what I think is usually better to do when we have a pretty balanced metagame. Instead of trying to take some things down a notch, I like seeing them try and bring up cards that have been underperforming for a while.
Yeah, no,
and that's what this patch was about.
It's nice because otherwise, like, you end up with these cards that you never ever use, right?
Mhm.
And especially if we're going to start pulling unowned cards from these packs that are coming out soon, like it'd be nice to use them, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, hey, maybe actually use Phastos. What? I mean, probably
Exactly.
not, but you never know.
You can at least try it, right? And that's I think that's a lot of the fun of card games, is just having a reason to experiment with things that maybe you tried in the past, or maybe you've never tried. Maybe,
Yeah.
I mean, I think Phastos is a great example of that, where Phastos did not land very well upon his release. He hasn't been changed at all since then. I really thought they would have buffed him a while ago, back when he made a spotlight reappearance a few months ago, but or maybe that was more recent. I don't remember. But I thought they would have tried something a while ago. So it was nice to see that he did get a little bit of love here. A lot of +1, changes to the buffs here. Phastos becoming a 3/4, Toxin becoming a 2/2 from a 2/1, the spider on Peni becoming a 3/4. So minor nudges up. They're not going to make these cards go from like seeing little play to seeing a ton of play, but they definitely don't hurt, and they give people a little bit more reason to experiment, especially with something like Phastos, where if people are trying out Surfer with Carter stuff, there's some synergy there, right? Like if you get that +2 buff on Carter, that's kind of nice. There's just, anytime there's more room to explore with stuff like that, I think it's a pretty positive thing.
Definitely.
And Ultron was the big buff of the patch,
Right?
getting 2 points instead of 1. They actually gave us this information early before he left Spotlights, which, big fan of them doing that. We won't have to deal with the Spotlight system soon, but I do think when they know they're going to be giving a card an adjustment, it is always the best thing to let people know, so they can adequately adjust their buying experience. If they know, all right, Ultron's weak, but they're going to make it stronger, maybe that makes someone reconsider who
Yeah.
was otherwise going to pass on him. And for me personally, Ultron was the most fun card of the month for me. So I was pretty excited to see he was getting a buff. Probably talk about him a little more later when we get to the decks, but I do
Yeah.
think this buff was pretty meaningful. I think there's still a little bit of room to touch up the stones a little bit. They touch on it in the OTA a bit, and they basically said, we are looking at other avenues to improve Ultron outside of just the base stats. The base stats are a little bit more impactful on a card like this because 2 of his stones directly care about his power, the Power Stone and the Reality Stone, doubling his power and creating a drone equal to his power. So you get a little bit more out of the buff than you would just a +1 or a +2 on another card, because he has that self synergy. But Ultron's also a big investment in terms of, you pay 5 energy to play it, and then if you want to get the value out of it, you need to pay 6 energy to play the stones.
Right.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they do a little bit of touching up on some of the weaker stones to make him have a little bit more success. But the card hasn't even been out that long, and I think they said that, where it's like, yeah, a change like that will take a little bit more testing, and it's a little harder to do immediately, rather than just being like, okay, we were a little low on the numbers here, we can immediately buff that up, because he's just not performing to the level that they want him to. And so I was really happy they made a quick change on that.
Yeah.
Because I think he's an incredibly fun card. For me personally, like, he was one of my favorite things about What If, watching through the show. I love the concept of Infinity Ultron. And so I was really pumped to see that they were quick about it. Because sometimes, some cards release underwhelming, and I mean, like Phastos,
Right. Yeah.
we didn't see such a quick turnaround on a Phastos buff, right? So I like when they're able to more quickly identify, like, all right, we missed the mark here. And again, I think that's one of the bigger strengths of OTAs, is being able to be like, all right, yeah, like we want to make this card, they want every card to feel like it has some kind of home. And Ultron definitely feels like he has more of one now than he did before the patch.
I really enjoyed playing Ultron in High Voltage, of all things.
Yeah,
Like,
that was
Oh
fun.
yeah. Yep.
I think that's where I got the most use out of it, because then I could play it early and play, more of the stones.
And you don't need Luna's Snow to
Yeah.
play him in that, because Luna has Luna has gone from a not super played card to played a fair bit. She got buffed a while back, but a lot of the Ultron lists are running her because it helps you get Ultron and the stones out a turn sooner. So
Right.
it's been pretty cool to see. And then one more change to round out the OTA, and I really, really liked seeing this. And they made a comment on it too, which I thought was very encouraging. Which was, so they changed Rhino. Rhino used to be a 3/3 on reveal, ruin a location. So it just made a location essentially have no text. And they changed it to a 3/6 on reveal at a rock at your side of this location. Now,
What did they say about why they did that?
basically they said they've been going back and looking at some of the older cards that don't have a home, and I think they kind of acknowledge this is part of them acknowledging that some of the last OTAs have been a little less eventful. And one of the big points of feedback a lot of people, myself included, have had is, some of the best OTAs they've done in recent months were ones where they made like the Atuma rework, where they breathed new life into a card that was previously pretty much unplayable and not being used. It's essentially like they just threw a new card in your collection. And I think just about every time they've done that, it's received pretty universal praise. And they don't do it super often. And I think the reason they don't do it super often is because, completely reworking a card takes a similar amount of resources as creating a new card. But you can't throw that reworked card in the token shop or a snap pack like you can. So I think, there's a little bit of a disincentive to do that a ton. But what was nice to see was in the OTA notes, they specified that they want to do more of this. Like, I don't think there are a ton of cards like Rhino where they're kind of completely useless, but there's definitely a handful of cards that fall into that boat. And it was nice to see them say, hey, we're doing this, and we're also going to try and do a bit more of this in the future. And to me, that's a really good sign. I like them doing that. It makes, it just breathes new life into cards and characters that just feel like they've fallen by the wayside a bit over time.
True. I did
and
see.
I think that's a huge positive thing.
I saw a few people playing Rhino in like Shaw lists, and I thought it was kind of interesting. Like, for a while there,
Surfer,
a lot of people were playing like negative and having Rhino. I mean, by and large, nobody plays the card, but it was interesting to see him there to shut off locations. So it's like shut off.
He was like
the
a C3
magic.
card back when C3 was like a playable deck like a year ago or something. Like, he occasionally showed up in Cerebro 3, although he was kind of just Scarlet Witch that couldn't screw you over but costed one more.
Yeah.
But he I don't think Rhino has ever really had much of a home outside of that. And even there, it was kind of fringe. Not all of them ran it. And now there's a little bit of synergy here, right? Like, you could throw him in Surfer with Captain Carter. So if you have Carter taking up your second spot, but you don't want to commit 2 more cards to the Carter lane, just jam in a Rhino. You get 2 bodies. Maybe you play it in a junk deck and you give someone the rock with a Viper or
I can see
like
it
that.
now with the timing of Strange Supreme. Like,
yeah, that's another one. Like, you play Strange on 2, you play Rhino on 3, eats the rock, profit.
Right. Well, plus a 3/6 is way overstated. So, and if Strange eats the rock, like, there's no
value.
downside.
You're getting a 3/8, right? 3/8 of stats. So I like a change like this, even though I don't think Rhino's gonna suddenly become this super popular card. It's more interesting than the old version, and I think it will long term see more play. And that is exactly what I want out of a change like this. Give people something, a little bit new to experiment with this older card that wasn't really being used for anything. I think it's just a net positive to the game when they do stuff like this. So I'm very pleased that they kind of said, not only are we doing this now, but we're going to try and do it more in the future. Because I think some of the best OTAs the game has had are ones where they make changes like this that take a card that just isn't doing anything and give it some new life. So that one made me particularly happy. They also, this isn't relevant to any of the cards that got changed in the patch, but I thought it was interesting to see, alongside mentioning that they're going to do more of this, they mentioned, I think it was when they were talking about Ultron, they were talking about how the 5 cost and 6 cost cards, certain ones have always been a bit more dominant than others. And because we play a 6-turn game, it's always very competitive which ones you're running, because you don't want to run a bunch of high cost cards in your deck because you don't have time to play them all.
Right.
And they did say in I think the near future, they're going to be, I think, looking more at trying to bring up some of the 5-drop and the 6-drop cards that just haven't really felt like they're able to compete with the more popular ones. So maybe we'll see some more reworks or some stat buffs there in the future. And I think that's pretty cool. I really like that kind of stuff. So as someone who wasn't super thrilled on the last OTA or two before this one really felt like not only a return to form, but it made me a bit more optimistic about the future ones, because I really like seeing patches like this one.
Same here. Yeah, same here. I love the Rhino change. I like seeing the old cards get changed. I think it just whatever, for whatever reason, and like you said, Rhino probably not going to necessarily fit in everything, but at least he's he'll see some play, just because you're guys like yourself that are doing content and stuff like that. It's just fun to do and say, let's play some decks with Rhino.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I kind of dig it when they do that. I think it just makes the game a little more fun. And yeah, like you were saying, he's the change to him is, and I think they also mentioned, didn't they? Because there were other cards that changed locations, like Nocturne and the red stone, obviously, that are always being used, or seems like always being used, and he just didn't have a home anymore. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed the patch this time. I thought it was a lot better than the last couple that we've gotten, and yeah, I think they were all, for the most part, pretty welcome changes.
Yeah, very, very cool to see. Apparently, I don't know exactly when this happened, but it sounds like one of the newer developers they hired at the start of the year has kind of taken over the OTA duties. I think before it was largely Glenn Jones. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he's moved to just focusing more on new card design. And it sounds like one of their new developers has kind of taken over the OTA stuff. So it's cool to see them kind of react to the feedback about the last few. And I'm looking forward to seeing what other stuff they come up with, because this one I think was pretty universally liked from what I saw. So
Yeah.
that's always a nice thing to see. But I think that's it for the OTA. I guess we could move on to the next topic. Do you want to talk about Strange, the most recently released card, I guess?
Yeah. The
Sure.
cards seem strong to me, at least in terms of this month's cards.
Definitely.
I saw him, like, played against him early on day one when it came out, and I was like, oh, okay. I mean, he just eats and eats and eats. This was one where when I read the description, it sounded underwhelming, and then I saw it in play, and I was like, oh, this is pretty strong, actually. So interesting for me, because I wasn't planning on buying this at first.
Yeah, he's Strange. When I saw him first, like, data mined, and even when I was building decks like the day before he came out, I really didn't know what to do with this card. Like, obviously in something like Thanos, you have a lot of stones he can eat up, and that is a thing that ended up happening. But I really didn't know. I didn't think it would be very good, because I thought, oh, this requires you playing a bunch of cards that you might not otherwise want to put into your deck. And I've been pleasantly surprised that, like, he has been interesting to build around. You've seen some clog adjacent stuff with, like, debris, but you can, like, eat your own rocks. It also serves as a clog counter for one of the versions of Thanos, where Thanos traditionally has been weak to clog because it fills up its own board with the stones. But now, if you're worried about that clog matchup as Thanos, you can just jam in Strange, and then your board's not getting quite as filled, and you're getting some extra points for doing so. So this card, I think, I guess aside from maybe the buff to Carter, I think has been the most impactful card of the season in terms of how much I've seen it played, and how it's definitely had the biggest reaction from people. Out of all the cards I've seen, this is the one where I've seen people seem to be having the most fun with it, because it's doing something kind of interesting and unique, and it's kind of having people build around it in different ways. And I think cards like that are always a very good addition to the game, especially when I think a lot of the releases prior to it either some of them fell a little flat, or ones like Goliath, where Goliath was a very strong card, but I think in a lot of the lists he went into, he didn't really make you play the game super differently. He was just a really solid addition to a deck that kind of already existed. So like he was really good in the Thanos ongoing, the base ongoing stuff. Although I have seen, and we'll talk about this a little later, I think I have seen a deck that is pretty different with Goliath that came up recently, which I've really enjoyed. That kind of only came about because of the Carter buff. But I think Strange Supreme was a really good example of a flashy card done right. Like I've seen so many screenshots of, I think I even shared one myself where I had like a 30 power Strange or something. And he's a little deceptive in that you see a 30 power 2-drop and you're like, well, that can't possibly be balanced. Like that's an infinite and a half on a 2-power card. But the thing is, he's not really a 2-cost, but he's not really a 2-cost card because you're paying into it to get him to be bigger. The only way he's going to grow is if you're playing those stones, playing those rocks. Yeah, you gotta feed the Strange. So I think that's a great design. It really kind of impressed me because I did not have high hopes for this card, and I'm happy to see that it actually landed, I think, the most positively out of all the initial releases we've had this month. So that's pretty exciting. It's also very just flavorful and fun. I like when they're able to really nail the flavor on a character. I know a lot of people, they're into it for the lore. They play the game because they love these characters, and so when they can make a card of a character just kind of really feel like it hits that flavor point while also being pretty playable, I think that's pretty much the best case scenario for a card like this. So I think it really shows. I think it really, for me, was a reminder as someone who has been a little bored with some of the recent releases up until Strange and Ultron. It's like, it's a reminder that they can still make really cool and interesting stuff like this.
Yeah, they really followed the lore with him too. Like it from the What If show, if you haven't seen it, he literally goes back in time and steals everything's powers. So yeah, I thought he was great. I think the only thing you have to be careful of is you got to protect him. You have to put
Definitely.
Cosmo in that lane because you last thing you want is for somebody to shang it, because you're wasting all that time. And the only funny things I've seen it do to other players that I played against is it'll just, if you happen to be winning one of the other lanes, or with Strange on your side, and then all of a sudden the next thing you know is he eats a card out of that other lane and you end up losing it. So, but yeah, he's fun. I'm really happy with it. I thought they did a great job. I think I had him ranked as my number one card of the month, and I may not be that far from it, although we have a pretty good move card coming out this week too. So, but yeah, I like him.
Does he?
Yeah, that's.
How does his movement work? Does he move to where the card he ate?
No, he stays where he is. One thing I was really surprised by was I got a lot of comments about this, and I saw a lot of other streamers get comments about it too. A lot of people thought he could only eat cards in the lane, in his own lane.
Interesting. Maybe it was the animation that was throwing me off. Like,
yeah,
because he like sucks it, Okay.
Yeah, it is not how a lot of people just didn't think it would work the way it does. I'm not sure what caused that confusion. I thought it was pretty straightforward, but I got that comment a lot that people thought he was only going to be able to eat cards in his own lane, and no, he can eat all across the board, and it's pretty good, and it's I think it's a lot easier to build around this card than I thought it was going to be. I thought you were going to have to run some like more awkward cards, like I don't know, Agony, or maybe Peni with the spider. I thought you'd have to actually play more merge cards to benefit from him more, but it turns out you can just play a Mysterio or a Shauna or some Thanos stones, and that really powers him up pretty quickly.
If you can play him on 2, it's backbreaking.
He gets huge.
Yeah.
But to Joe's point, like, you do have to be a little bit careful because sometimes he will yoink that key card that's winning you another lane. So I love cards that have a little bit of a risk reward factor. Like I know he's been being played in a tech version of Thanos. Sometimes that list runs Iron Patriot. Iron Patriot's a pretty good card, but you can't always rely on that thing it generates for you, because sometimes Strange will eat it up. And if Strange is already a 10 plus power card, you usually don't need a whole ton more power in that lane. So it is something you have to be very aware of. And I've definitely had moments like that where it's screwed me over, or you have other moments where it eats the only thing on the board that's enough to win them the lane or something like that. So it's definitely a clip farming card. I think it definitely
Oh,
has
yeah.
some big highs and big
Mhm.
lows, and I think those are the cards people really respond a lot to, compared to things that, like, I guess, like Goliath, like I mentioned earlier, where that great card, but not as flashy, not as in your face, not as like doing different things, even though it's a strong
It's just
card.
low key good. Yeah, this is
Yeah, it's like Speed. I remember when Speed came out, and I remember my review of Speed was essentially, this is a good card, but it's incredibly boring.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
it's stats, it's effective, it's not bad by any means, but it's not going to be played as much as I think it should be, at least when it came out, because it's not doing something super flashy or different.
right,
And
right.
I think Strange is like
Mhm.
about as opposite to that as you can get. It is very flashy, it's very fun, and I think for many people it's going to be their favorite card of the season. So it's nice to see the what if season's kind of going out with a bit of a bang, even though it started a bit, more quietly.
I saw a
So
really interesting deck earlier. I didn't screenshot it or anything, but I played against a couple different variations with Strange, people playing like Squirrel Girl, Mysterio, things like, remember when Sasquatch came out and people were,
yep,
kind of experimenting, and so it sort of fits into that archetype. It's really weird.
yeah, I've
Uh,
definitely seen some experimenting with that.
so I don't think that's over yet. Like, I mean, the card's only been out less than a week, right? So
Yeah.
I'm sure those type of things will get refined as well. And
Yeah, I think one of the big litmus tests of a new card is seeing what happens to it
mhm,
after its debut week, because you know there's a new card every week. The new card's always gonna be the thing a lot of people focus on, especially in streams and whatnot,
right,
because everyone wants to see it, find out if it's a card worth getting. But I think the real question is, what happens to the card when it's not the shiny new thing, and Hydra
mhm,
Stomper comes along and gives people a new toy to mess with. Does Strange Supreme hold up? Do people still keep playing it? And I think Strange is going to be one of the cards that does kind of hold up past its initial release, just because it's exciting and fun and different, and seems to be on the surface at least fairly strong.
Mhm.
So I think that's a pretty solid release, and I was pleasantly surprised by it as someone who wasn't super excited for the card before release. Didn't really know what I was going to do with it. Didn't really expect it to be that good of a card based on just like what decks were good, what other cards were good. So
yeah.
I love it when I'm wrong about something like that, because I'd much rather a card be like interesting and good and different than kind of not really finding a home. And Strange has definitely found some homes. So I'm curious to see how that evolves over time as people try out more decks and figure out which ones he's good in and whatnot. But it's really interesting how he has given people a reason to experiment with Thanos outside of the ongoing shell, because ongoing Thanos, it rose up as the most popular version of Thanos, and there wasn't too much reason to be playing a non-ongoing version. But now with Strange Supreme, you have an interesting like tech Thanos list where you're running Cosmo to protect the Strange. You're running some other tech cards to make up for points in different lanes, like Shang-Chi, sometimes Enchantress. And so there's an interesting dynamic there where if ongoing Thanos is popular and then people start playing Clog to counter it, well, you could just switch to this version of Thanos that is running Strange to not be as susceptible to Clog, because you can block their Clogs with Cosmo. You can eat
Yeah.
up their rocks with Strange. You don't have as many of your stones on board because Strange is eating them up. This was the very popular list that's been going around on Untapped since his release. I don't like Shadow King in it. I kept it in here because that was the popular version of the list. I think that's a pretty big flex slot. You can play a lot of cards in there. I was trying Loki because Loki's kind of fun in the Thanos mirror, because you don't get any of opposing Thanos' stones, so you just get all their kind of best cards at a cheaper rate. But that is a big flex spot in the deck. I don't think Shadow King is actually that great in this version, but that was what was kind of popularized on day one, so it's still showing up in the data a lot.
It's
but a lot of tech cards.
The strange tech.
Yeah, that's also a part of it, right? Anytime a new card comes out, people are gonna be trying to play the counter too, because so many people are playing the new card.
I saw people playing Gorgon a lot because there was
yep,
so much.
Gorgon's getting a little more popular too because of Thanos. But
say,
the funny thing about Gorgon is it's not even an amazing Thanos counter. Like, it has its moments, but if you've played much Gorgon, you've probably had a moment where Thanos plays a stone on turn 1, and then they play 2 stones on turn 2, and that's by the time you get your Gorgon down.
Yeah,
so
I've had that exact.
They've already played half their stones.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen every time, but so Gorgon, it's like it's decent tech, and it also hurts other things like Victoria Hand decks and Iron Patriot card and other stuff. But yeah, it's definitely not the one-stop shop for stopping Thanos, but it's cool to see a different Thanos list emerge. I think the ongoing one is stronger on average for pure points, but you have a trade-off there in that your deck is more weaker to counter tech like Enchantress and things like that. Whereas the Strange version, it's packing a lot of that tech. It's a little bit weaker on its base points, but it can really swing a lane with that tech that your opponent might not see coming. But yeah, this is the version of ongoing Thanos I've been playing. I'm not actually sure if Captain Carter makes the cut here long term. I enjoyed it. I've had fun playing with it in that slot, but I wouldn't be surprised if another 4-drop is more popular there. I know Kahori has been experimented with this a bit. Some people are trying Mobius now because stops opposing Mockingbirds, makes it so the Thanos doesn't get reduced by the Time Stone, helps with matchups that can be a little harder to beat, like Mr. Negative, that can be bigger than you. But it is cool to try the card in the Thanos ongoing.
There was a lot of discard at the beginning of the month, and both like the Bullseye version and the Khonshu version.
Khonshu, yeah.
And so getting these things, Mobius is all right.
Yeah, there are a lot of options. I mean, I think ongoing Thanos can be a bit of a toolbox, which is cool. Like, there's so many. I mean, for a very long time, ongoing decks were kind of a bit of a meme where like Spectrum was this card that has existed since the start of Marvel Snap, but it took a very long time for Spectrum to ever have she was always kind of the weakest of the starter archetypes. Like, you'd always tell people, oh, you can play like Zoo with Khazar and Blue Marvel, or maybe you make like a Destroy deck with Bucky and Wolverine and stuff. Those ones were a lot more common, in the early Marvel Snap experience. And Spectrum decks never really held up to those other early new player archetypes. But now that we've had, some ongoing cards have gotten buffed over time, new ones have been added to the game, it feels like Spectrum has finally found a foothold on like a real solid deck. I think the only other time she's been super relevant was like at the very start of the game, back when Professor X did his old thing and the Destroyer was really good. She was around a little bit there because it was, you put your opponent in a weird spot of, oh, I have to try and beat Destroyer, or I have to try and beat Spectrum, but it's hard to beat both of them. And then very briefly last year, when we had the Leech meta, a lot of people were playing Spectrum ongoing because you didn't run a lot of on reveals. So the Leech, that was back when Leech only hit on reveal cards, but he didn't just hit your big cards. He hit all the on reveals. So Spectrum saw some play then, and then that deck got nerfed, and Spectrum got, I think, a point of power taken away. And she got that point back a little while ago, and now she's pretty real part of what is making ongoing Thanos strong. And even non-ongoing Thanos is a pretty serviceable deck that just got a boost with the Captain Carter change. So it's kind of nice to see ongoing finally have some time in the sun, given how much of its life in Snap it hasn't really been super good or prevalent. So it's nice to see.
Yeah. After they murdered my Doom 2099 twice.
Yeah, poor Doom. Doom, I think I said it last episode and I stand by it. Doom is a card that I am confidently going to say in like a year's time will be like fully reverted because the game's power will have gone up more. And so it will be safe to bring him back to his old form. Like, I think
Probably.
they've done that with some other cards in the past. Struggling to think of an example off the top of my head, but there are definitely cards where it was like, oh, this was way too strong when it came out. And then, the power level has gone up in the game. So it's a bit more reasonable to bring back those cards that were like really oppressive a long time ago. Now they're not as oppressive because there are so many other good cards in the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, he's definitely down for the count for now. I have not seen a Doom deck in quite some time.
Nope.
After his second nerf. That second nerf really did him in, unfortunately, for all the Doom fans out there, which I kind of was one. I did enjoy, although I mainly liked how it let me play original Doctor Doom again, because that was one of my favorite cards in the early days. But Doom will be back at some point in time, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not today.
We'll give it a little while.
They'll wait and give him a nice buff before the Doomsday film comes out, probably.
Yeah, right. Like buff it up right as we're getting the new Avengers movie. With Doom.
They do that.
They do, yeah, and I think that's good marketing. Honestly, I think that's great marketing.
Mm-hmm.
They did that with Agatha, because I think it really just one thing, and we could probably do a whole podcast about this, so I won't dive too deep into it. But I think in the modern era of creating digital collectible card games and trading card games, if you do not have a rock solid intellectual property, it's, I think, impossible to succeed. I think card games in general have always been a little bit of a niche, and they also are things that the players who do enjoy them, like us, get very invested in. Like I got really into Magic the Gathering. Me and Nate used to be really into Hearthstone. But with that investment comes time and money. And when you're very heavily invested into a card game with your time or your money or both of those things, it's very hard to want to pick up a new card game because it's going to be asking, time and money from you. And so I think it's hard to make a new card game in 2025. Even when Snap came out, I think it was kind of hard to do that. But I think Snap made a lot of decisions, getting a really rock solid, huge, popular IP with Marvel, finding some ways to make themselves stand out from the competition, being a built from the ground up mobile game that's faster paced. Like we talked about earlier, how they handle balance a little differently with the OTAs, just capitalizing on the strength of the IP is, I think, what has allowed them to not only find success in the market, but become, one of the dominant players in it. And I think that is just true in general, where if you could make the best card game of all time, you could get Richard Garfield to make Magic the Gathering 2 under a different name, and it could be a better game. And if it didn't have that huge IP to help get it to the masses, I don't think it would be very successful, because people are really dug in on the card games they enjoy. And if you're not already a card game player, I think there's usually a high barrier to become a card game player, because there's so much you have to learn. And that's one of the things I think Snap is really good about. Is I know so many people who have said, hey, yeah, Snap's my first card game. I never really got into card games, but I heard good things about it and I checked it out, and it was very approachable to learn as a new player. Yeah. And I think that lower barrier to entry plus a very popular IP to get people interested in is just a surefire way to succeed. And it shows in Snap, and it shows in other card games in the market. Like I believe it's not even out yet, but Magic is doing a crossover with Final Fantasy, and I believe it's already the most sold set of all time, even though it's not out for another like 2 or 3 months or something. It's they really, for better, for worse, whether you like it or not, that is the thing that card games, I think, need to do right now to maintain relevancy, is they capitalize on either having a big IP of their own or capitalizing on other big IPs that they can, put in their game. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm a big Marvel movie fan. I talk about them on my podcast every week, and it's like I knew coming into this year that last year was kind of a slow year for Marvel overall. There's some
Yeah.
things that were pretty decent, but and I knew coming into this year, with the stuff we have coming up, and then of course Fantastic Four. I mean, they already data mined 4 new Fantastic Four cards. So yeah, you're right. The stuff that's going on with Marvel is always going to make more people come to this game. It just is. And or players that maybe were playing the game before, maybe you'll pick it back up again. So it's always exciting when that happens. And there's just a lot more stuff coming out. I mean, I'm almost convinced we've got a Marvel Zombies set probably coming in October because I've seen it in that Snap art book that came out.
Mhm.
They have like 7 different zombie cards in there, and a
Wait,
lot
there's
of
an
them
art
are.
book?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
there
they did an
is.
art book recently. It's
It's
very nice.
very cool. Yep. Yeah, it's
Really?
very cool. Yep, it's a nice, really, really well made
Oh, I
tabletop book.
see it right here.
Yeah, it came out this
Yeah.
year. It's I've
Yep.
seen pictures. It's really, I mean, that is definitely one of the things I think just about everyone can agree on, is that the art they do
Oh
in Snap
man.
is just really, they really take it to, I think, the next level in terms of, I played a lot of card games. I love card games. I don't think I've ever like been as into the cosmetic side of it as I have
Yep.
been with Snap. Like I liked gold cards in Hearthstone. They were neat. I like the animations, but especially with the splitting system, maybe some of the issues with character mastery aside, I think they really found something there that I've never really experienced in a lot of other card games in terms of like I thoroughly enjoy just collecting the different variants of characters and
Agreed.
they
Yep.
I think that, we've talked about it so many times over the years, but how that premise, in the Ben Brode ad where they talk about unique collections, the real unique collection shouldn't have been it never should have been, well, you can't get all the cards and so you have to work with what you have. The real unique collection is what variants you have for your cards and
Yes.
how you
Yep.
customize them. And I think that was actually the real winner of like a way to do that idea, as opposed to like being more limited on the what cards you can acquire. I think it was,
Yep.
they really do a good job with the art. So if you like the art, check out the art book.
It's
It's
very
pretty
cool.
sweet.
Yep.
It's
I really
it's on
like it.
it's on sale right now, actually. Yeah, $35. It's 30% off. Regular price is 50.
It's
Wow.
like hardcover too. I'm pretty sure it's a
It
pretty
is.
quality book. It's
Yep. The
it's rather nice.
pages are like really nice and everything like that. Yeah, it's really cool. And you get to see a lot of variants that we didn't get yet.
Yeah, I don't even think, I think a lot of them, or at least some of them, haven't even been in like the data mines yet.
Yep.
There's some art we have not seen before, so that's pretty cool.
I was buying
Yep.
all those Hearthstone books when we were playing. Like they would do a new
Yeah.
one each year, and I still have them. It's so cool to flip through and see the like full page, full color artwork without all the other junk on it.
Yeah, because it's
So-
very different. Like as someone who has a lot of experience working with some of this artwork, because myself and most other Snap people use a lot of the art from the game for thumbnails for YouTube and stuff. It's
oh yeah.
there's definitely more to appreciate in some of these pieces than you can see
Mhm.
just in the frame in the game when you see that full version of the artwork.
The full version of the locations is amazing. When
Yeah.
you see the full art for the locations that they use, because we don't get to see much of that.
Mhm.
And when you see the full artwork for it, it's like, wow, that looks amazing. It's too bad they couldn't fit the whole thing on the card.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're gorgeous.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Good shout on that one. Yeah, I saw some pictures of that, but I might have to pick that up at some point. It's neat to have especially in a game where it's all digital and you don't have anything really like
Yep.
physical from it. It's cool to have a physical copy of
Yep.
like a part of that.
Agreed.
So that's neat to see. Let's see what else is on the radar here. We could,
I mean, we have a
I guess,
couple other decks that you brought, or otherwise.
yeah, we
what-
could talk
what
about the
else
other
is-
decks.
I don't know what else is really upcoming.
I think the big thing. Oh, we were going to talk a little bit about high voltage, and then I figured we would close with thoughts leading up to the acquisition on Tuesday, because I figured that's probably the biggest topic. Because there's just so much we've been we've been talking about card acquisition improvements and a rework to the system for probably over a year or something. It's been a long time. And so now it's finally happening. So I figured we could close with that because it's a big topic. But high voltage, real quick. High voltage came back, gave us Toxie Doxie. They ran it back-to-back months. I don't think people liked that as much, and I don't think Second Inner probably really wanted to do that. But if you were around the last time Deadpool's Diner came around, there was a lot of criticism because they kind of branded it as, well, Deadpool's Diner 2.0 is coming back. And then it wasn't very 2.0. They kind of just ran it back. They didn't really change much of anything. One of the only things they changed was they made it so there were less bots, and that just made people struggle more and worse queue times, and there was frustration, and they actually reverted that change pretty quickly. But I think they've publicly said they were gonna take a deeper look at the diner before it came back again.
Yeah.
And so we got high voltage 2 months in a row, and I think that's part of the reason, is because I think maybe a while ago they planned for the diner to be coming back this month, but they're probably still working on it, which is good because I would like to see that pretty heavily improved before it comes back, because I think we were all in agreement that it was my least favorite
Agreed.
mode they've done by a pretty significant. Like, the art was great, I think thematically it's great, but I was not a fan of the gameplay and it wasn't different enough,
and it's like high stress, at least with
it was high stress for a lot of people. I know a lot of people who opted out of it the second time around because they just didn't really like I think it's a great example of psychologically we're more likely to remember bad things than good things that happen to us. And when you lose in Deadpool's Diner and you get the little pop-up that might as well be a Miss Marvel thumbs up saying buy more bubs or wait, it's like, I think people respond to that pretty negatively. It feels bad. So I'm hoping they find a way to make that mode a bit more appealing, because I'm sure there's some way to do it. But we got high voltage, we got Toxie. Toxie's a 2/1 on reveal. Give 2 cards in your hand +2. You can't play them next turn. The animation for this is hilarious.
Oh, it really is.
Yeah, I haven't played.
Have you seen it?
It really is. She dumps like green goop, like it's almost like slime getting slimed in Ghostbusters, and it goes all over your avatar.
It's funny. I saw a number of people saying, well, Eliath is no longer the fart card. Toxie has taken the throne.
Noxious gas, yes.
Yeah, it's because it's a persistent effect. It goes on the whole time until you can play the card. So it's pretty funny. The VFX team did a very good job with it. In terms of playability, it's not that great of a card, at least right now, but it's fun, and I've seen people do some fun stuff with it, and it's a pretty all right card. The one thing about high voltage, so high voltage, when it came out after Diner, and I think it got a lot of praise because high voltage in many aspects is much more casual friendly and like the opposite of stressful compared to how people found the Diner to be kind of stressful. However, and like I'm in agreement with that. Like I think high voltage, is very appealing, and it shows that there is a pretty big desire for a more casual, low stakes mode in the game. People don't always want to have that stress of like, oh, maybe I want to jam a game or two of Snap, but I don't really want to risk my ladder rank, or I want to play something I know is not very good but is kind of fun, like a thematic deck. And so I think high voltage is kind of neat for players who fall into that group. But the ironic thing about it is it does so many things right at being a good casual mode, but it does one of the more important things for a casual mode, I think, not great, which is the reward structure. The rewards are great, but it is pretty demanding on how much you have to do those quests. Like, I know a number of people who did not finish it because the quests don't stack up. So it's asking you to, play high voltage and do those quests multiple times a day. You don't have to do every single one you get, but you do have to do a pretty large amount of them. So if you're someone who only plays the game once a day, you're not going to get high voltage done because you just don't get enough quests, and that's how you get the majority of your progress is through quests.
Yeah.
The playing the game doesn't actually progress you that much outside of the quests. So that's something I've always found a little ironic, where it's like they found this really great casual friendly mode, but if you actually want to get the max reward, you have to treat it a bit not casual. You have to be very like on top of like doing your quests. And that's one, if we see like one or two changes to high voltage, probably the biggest one I'd like to see is to let the quests stack up, like let them stack up for a day. Let you get up to like 9 quests and you can do them. I think that would probably deal with, I think, the biggest complaint I've seen about high voltage, which is that if I'm a more casual player who's just not interested or not able to log in multiple times a day through the course of the event, because the event's short, it's only like a week, right?
Yeah, and I've got FOMO from playing this game, so like I don't want to miss the card like King Eitri I missed from Deadpool's Diner round 2, and then then
Agamotto comes out and it's like, wait, King Eitri's like a card I want to play now, and it's like,
right,
well, it's okay, just
they keep
hit up one of those 4U bundles.
They keep trying to sell it to me for $100, and it's like,
yeah, the 4U with the Series 4. It's a little silly, but yeah, it's one thing. And then the other thing I think that would be really good for high voltage, especially in a situation like this where they ran it back to back. I think they should feel a little bit more free to mess with the ban list. Oh,
that'd be great. Can we just ban Arnim Zola?
Ban Zola and Juggernaut and see what that does, and maybe unban one of the other cards or something. Like, I'd like to see what happens if we do a high voltage where Galactus is allowed. Don't do it all the time, but it'd be kind of funny to see just how crazy that gets.
If they were to switch the ban list every time, that would
really, I think people would like it a lot more.
I would too. Right, I would too. And I get
something to give it. I get
there's certain cards that are always, you can't play Magic because that's it.
Yeah, some cards just don't work with the mode, right?
But it'd be cool to switch it up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not like it's a competitive environment. It's not like there are super high stakes on the game. I feel like they have very little to lose in doing that because it's just a fun event for a week. And if the thing they change doesn't end up being great, don't do it next time.
Right.
It's they don't have much to lose. That's one thing I really loved about Sanctum, was how they did that early ban list that really, I think, shook up and improved the format quite a lot. Rather than, initially, I didn't think they were going to do any bans midway through. I thought they were going to let it run and then evaluate it for next time. But no, they were very quick on that. And I think it led to a lot of people having a lot more fun with Sanctum, which was my favorite of the limited time mode. So don't be afraid to change up the ban list more often. I think limited time modes really favor being able to do that, to keep them kind of fresh and different. And I think that's exactly what you want these limited time modes to be, just a fresh way to engage with Snap that's different than the one we're very accustomed to after the game being out for 2 going on 3 years.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's the thing I was most disappointed about with this one is that when I looked at the ban list, I'm like, wow, this is the smallest ban list I think they've had yet in that mode. And I'm like, take 1 month and ban Black Panther and ban like Zola and Shang, even like make it like change it up and just let people kind of, have fun with it, enjoy it, use some different cards that they might not use and things like that. I agree.
Yeah, that would be cool. So hopefully we see that in the future. I imagine high voltage won't be doing a 3-peat. I don't think we'll be getting it next month.
No, probably not.
Probably see maybe a return of Sanctum, or maybe they've had enough time to do some diner overhauling. But it does seem like they're trying to get to a place where they can do one of these limited time modes every month.
Yeah.
And they said with the changes to card acquisition coming, they're going to be releasing more Series 4 cards, and some of those cards will be continuing to release through these events. So I think they're trying to get to a spot where they can rotate between, like, now they have 3 of them. I think they've publicly said they have other ones in the works. I think they want to get to a place where they're doing an event every month, and they have enough of them so they don't have to repeat them, and they can keep it kind of interesting. And I think that's a big benefit to the game. I think that is, there's always been a lot of discussion about people wanting a new permanent mode, and I think there can be some arguments for and against that. But I think the limited time modes have done a pretty good job at giving you something a little different to do each month, and so I'm excited to see how that develops into the future.
Yep, agreed.
But I think that's really it for high voltage. Do we want to go on to the last big topic of the card acquisition revamp stuff? Like it's
Yeah.
Yep.
And so please tell me, I'm sure that you do. In fact, you had mentioned it briefly before we started, but you got some like YouTube video that's kind of explained it all for me, because I read the blog posts and it's just my eyes kind of glazed over. And
yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of information, and it's only going to be more information because they're going to put out the odds for the bonus goodies in the packs, and there's a lot of stuff to digest, and certainly not everyone wants to comb through it all and try and figure it out, and that's what keeps me employed. Um, so yeah, I've covered some stuff on it. I've given some thoughts actually right before we started the show tonight. I finished editing my kind of full overview and review of Snap Packs that'll be going up with the launch of the packs on Tuesday. And I think it's the longest video I've ever made on my current channel. I think the only things I've ever done that were longer than that were like the old Hearthstone Mercenaries tournaments that like were just longer because tournaments are long. But yeah, the it's a big moment, right? We've been waiting for card acquisition revamps for a while. They kept saying it's coming, and now it's finally gonna be here. And
you think it's gonna
earlier
be
on,
good or bad? Or
I'm pretty optimistic. Which I always say, like when it comes to system revamps, I think cautious optimism is always a safe way to go. Like I go in with very little expectations, and I'm hoping this system kind of meets what it needs to do. Because I mean, card acquisition problems have been an issue in the game pretty much from the beginning. Like, I know we have a lot of listeners and people who watch like the content that I do who have joined the game at various points. Some people have been around since the beginning. Some people have been around since beta. Others have joined more recently. The thing with Snap is when Snap was being made, they had a very different idea for how card acquisition was going to work. And essentially, it was a gacha loot box. That's what it was in beta. You may have heard of the fabled Nexus events. Yeah, that was their initial plans way back in beta of summer 2022 or so. That was their plan for how they were going to monetize this game. And I've been planning on doing like a whole Nexus event breakdown eventually, but the TLDR on it was, well, they had Snap in beta. Most of the beta were dedicated card game fans, many of whom, were Hearthstone players who recognized Ben Brode's name and were excited about seeing his new project. And then they came out with the acquisition system, and it turns out, card gamers like packs. They don't mind a little bit of gambling, but a lot of card gamers aren't a big fan of gacha elements. That was probably the first major controversy the game ever had. Was they tried to introduce this new system. They called it Nexus Events. A lot of people thought it was like, oh, it's going to be a in-game event. No, it was just a loot box you could buy with money that had very poor odds. And so it went very poorly, and the developers very quickly had to be like, okay, yeah, we're scrapping this. We're not doing this. We hear you. We're going to find a different way to get people new cards. And it feels like ever since then, they've been kind of jumping from one thing to another to figure out the best way to release cards in their game. Because it's the thing that Snap does different than a lot of other card games is it's not releasing big sets of cards all at once. It's releasing one card a week, sometimes a little more than that with the season pass nowadays. But naturally, you have way less cards than, let's say, a Hearthstone set where they're dropping 120 cards all at once. So I think that always gave them a big challenge in terms of how do we monetize that? How do we make that work? And I think it's something they've struggled with for a long time because originally they had the token shop and things were token based, and they had the series drops, and they were like, all right, well, if you wait long enough, the cards will eventually be free. You can get enough tokens to get one card of your choosing a month. But what happened with that was, well, it led to everyone buying the same card that looked the best and ignoring most of the other cards. And a lot of people would only buy the big bads like Thanos and Galactus because they knew they would never drop, and just waited for all the other cards to become free. And that wasn't a very sustainable business model. And it also, I think, made the game a bit more boring because like you just couldn't afford to waste your tokens on launch Sentry that was like stone cold unplayable. It's like, why would I buy that when I could buy Iron Lad or Jeff or one of the. They also released, I think the quality of releases varied a lot back then too, where they hadn't figured out the balance as well. So like some cards were just so much better than others.
Yeah.
And then they were like, hey, we hear you guys. We know this system isn't optimal. We're working on a way to get more cards into the hands of more players. And that was the tagline on Spotlight Caches. And if you were around when Spotlights came out, Spotlights were, they're not viewed as positively nowadays, but by and large, by the community, they were really well received when they first dropped. And I was one of the few people who had some skepticism long term, and that skepticism ended up playing out kind of how I thought it would. The Spotlight system, it depended a lot on both series drops and having a schedule that worked well. And the Spotlights were great for players who were missing a ton of cards, but as you got more and more cards, you ended up having fewer and fewer Spotlight weeks that were very appealing to you. There were some major feels bads, right? Like if you got that random slot and you got already owned. And
I can't tell you how many times, we almost we had joked about changing the name of the podcast to Already Owned, a Marvel Snap podcast.
It just felt bad.
Yeah.
And the developers themselves acknowledged this. They acknowledged that was one of the major pain points of Spotlights was I think they used this term where it was like rolling a cursed 4-sided dice. If you hit the 1 and 4, you were super happy. You paid 1 key, you got the card you're looking for. Let's go. But other times you did not get what you wanted, and it especially got rough because the more cards you had, you were not even getting new cards at a point. You were getting variants for cards you already had. Now, maybe that's fine if you're into the cosmetics or it's a variant you really like for a character you really like. But when I'm getting a variant for a character I barely play that I already have art I like for, it feels like I'm just setting my resources on fire and getting something I don't want as a result of just trying to get the new card to play with. And that was a pretty big, major pain point in Spotlights.
Yeah, agreed. 100%. That was a good synopsis there.
Yeah, we're speed running the history of card acquisition in this game. But yeah, so like Spotlights had their issues, and for a long time they've been saying, hey, we know this isn't super sustainable. We're working on a new acquisition update that's going to change things. And we've been waiting. And then recently we got some news like, hey, it's coming, and it's happening faster than I thought it would. I thought, we didn't hear anything for a while. I figured it would be like a later this year kind of thing, but we got the news. They said, hey, it's going to happen either end of April or early June. And I was leaning towards early June because usually the second date is the one they usually go with, but no, they're able to get it out the door this Tuesday, and that is Snap Packs. They are adding packs to a card game. This is shocking. Who would have thought? Like the original traditional pack method could be the solution to all their woes. But it's not really a traditional pack method because they still have the whole Snap has fewer cards thing. But the pack stuff seems very interesting. But the biggest thing about it is that we're going to have tokens be prevalent again. If you didn't play the game at the very beginning, you might not have been around for or known that tokens used to be a lot more prevalent than they are right now. You used to just buy your cards for tokens in the token shop. That was how you mainly got new releases. And nowadays, most players, I think, are using the Spotlight caches because tokens are a lot more scarce. They want you to go through the Spotlight system. Tokens are kind of a secondary way, and they're just getting rid of that. They're saying, all right, tokens, they're back. Spotlight keys out, tokens back in. If you haven't followed any of the stuff about packs, essentially all your keys and all the keys on the collection track, they're all being converted to 3,000 tokens a pop. So that is a pretty big change. And then you can use the tokens like you can today to buy a card outright, but you can also buy these different packs with tokens. And we're still waiting on the final blog for some of the hard numbers about how these packs are going to work, but we have a good general understanding of how it's going to go, where they have 5 different pack types: seasonal, series 5, seasonal, series 4, and then collectors, series 5, 4, and 3. And packs are always going to have one card you do not own. No more duplicates, no more getting already owned. So that is kind of a win in and of itself. I'm going to enjoy no longer seeing that. That was not super fun. And then to make it a pack, you can't just have one card in a pack. They have 2 bonus goodies in each pack. And they've said the bonus goodies are going to contain various different currencies. But the most exciting part about it is the high roll potential of you can have a pack that has an extra card or even 2 extra cards. So that is to reference the old 3x value from the Darkhawk bundle. You could get some 3x value from a pack. You could get a pack that gets you 3 Series 5 cards, or like a Series 5 and then Series 4 and Series 3 with it. And this seems to be their big thing to help make card acquisition better. We're going to see what the actual odds are on those bonus loot things on Tuesday. They haven't put that out yet, but in general, I think this is a good thing. But the most interesting thing to me about packs is I think that packs for certain players might actually be kind of bait, and you're better off just taking the tokens you get and buying the cards you want outright rather than gambling on a pack. It's kind of like the Spotlight system when, it pushes some people who maybe you don't have enough keys saved up. The advice has always been only open if you have enough keys. And I think you've been on the other end of this, Nate, where you have like 2 keys and you really want the new card and you roll the dice, but it doesn't, you get snake eyes. It doesn't come up the way you want, and you miss out on the new card and it feels bad. And with tokens being a primary acquisition method again, you can just get the card you want. There's no more. I think the best example of what I think makes this a big change that helps new players and returning players especially is, let's say I have a friend who they've been playing a bunch of Marvel Rivals and they're thinking of getting into Marvel Snap, and they see, oh, look, there's Galacta. I know her from Rivals, or Rocket and Groot, one of these characters I really like. And that is, the thing that makes them want to get into the game. Before this upcoming system, if someone said, hey, I wasn't playing when Galacta came out, but I really want this card, like, what's your advice? There wasn't really good advice to give people other than find a low interest rate credit card or wait like 6 months. Like it was really hard to give people advice to get the cards they wanted, especially old season pass cards, which usually would take like 8 months or more to show up in spotlights again. They took a very long time to come back. Spotlights were the main way of card acquisition. Tokens were hard to get. It's if someone says, hey, I want Sam Wilson, I just saw the new movie, I want to play with Sam Wilson. It's like, well, if you didn't pay the $10 2 months ago, you're going to have a bit of a harder time making that happen. And now with tokens being the primary thing that's going to get you cards again, I can give someone a path to getting that favorite card they really want to play with. And I think that's the biggest thing about this update. That's even better than the packs for a lot of people, is just now I can say, hey, you're a new player, or I think it's even best for returning players. If you're someone who already did that Series 3 journey a year ago or 2 years ago, back when you were playing Snap, but you want to come back, but it's always felt kind of hard to come back. Now I can just say, hey, all right, save up a month's worth of tokens, month and a half worth of tokens, and you can get the exact cards you need to build the deck you want to play. You don't have to manage a spotlight schedule for the next however many months. And I think that is really the biggest thing to me about this system that is going to fix a lot of the pain points Snap has had, because it's always baffled me how, like, if someone really loves the idea of a card or a deck, like I've seen so many people who are like, oh, this Scream deck seems really cool, I want to come back to the game and play it, and they ask for advice on how to make that happen, and it's like, it's been almost impossible to give people good advice other than just like trying to pay money to progress to it faster. Because if you're doing it fully free to play, it takes a really, really long time under the current system.
Yeah.
And returning players just don't have enough interest and energy to sit around for 6 months waiting to get the pieces of the deck they want to play. People have short attention spans. You're not gonna struggle through that long a period of time, especially if you don't have things you like to play currently in your collection. I've seen it so many times. Someone shows up, they say, hey, I'm a returning player, I'm looking for advice. Try and give them the best advice you can, but a lot of times there's not a straight path to getting those people what they want, and they quit within the same week they come back because it feels kind of hopeless to actually get the cards they want. So even though packs are cool and there are, I think, a lot of benefits to them for certain players, I think the real big benefit is the fact that you can be like, okay, I know I'm getting, for the equivalent of, what is now 2 keys on the track, you can just buy any card you want in the game. They needed to do that. They've needed to do that for a long time to improve the agency of getting the cards that people really want into the hands of players, rather than being like, all right, well, spotlights, they technically got you more cards, but getting more cards isn't as great if you're not actually getting the cards you want most. Quality over quantity, basically. And I think that's what matters to most card game players more than anything. Like, I think if you could have like 50 cards, but maybe you only enjoy 10 of them, versus having 20 cards, but you really like all those 20 cards, I think most people are picking the 20 cards, because what good is a card you have if you don't actually want to play with it, right?
Yeah.
True.
So it's that definitely, I think, is my favorite thing about where we're going with the snap packs and returning to tokens.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, we've got friends. NHL is a good example, right? Who hasn't played in a year or whatever, and it's like right now it's just impossible to come back. So
yeah. So if you're a lapsed player, like you have someone in chat bringing it up,
yep.
If you're someone who
T-Rex.
quit 2 years ago or whatever, and it's felt like there's never been a great time to get back into the game, I think that Tuesday is probably the best time there's ever been to give things another shot, because it just seems like the path to getting the things you want to play with is much more straightforward and less complicated and less expensive than it was, in the last, pretty much ever since they made spotlights a year and a half ago or however long it's been. So I'm pretty optimistic about it. I'm curious to see how things go and the reception, but I really love that now, like, and I'm going to do a video about this later this week. I have a list of like 5 or 6 decks where these are all pretty high tier, very viable, strong decks that all play very different, like Mr. Negative, Scream, Scar, big guys, like pretty traditional card game archetypes. And most of those decks, you just need 4, maybe 5, series 4 or 5 cards to actually have the pieces you need to play them. And going off of the math that the numbers we've been given, you can do that as a free to play player in like a bit over a month. And if you want to speed that up, you still can do that with money. But before, it was not, it genuinely felt like sometimes it could be like a year ordeal of trying to just get the individual pieces you wanted for a specific deck. And then by the time that happens, the meta has probably shifted. New cards have come out. Who knows if the deck you were playing is even, or the deck you were going for is even worth getting anymore. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's, like what happened with Doom 2099, where the card just isn't that great anymore, that something got nerfed. A new thing came out that's powerful and pushed it out. So I think I really think the agency is the big bolded word for me about snap packs that I think is going to really help with some of the pain points this game has had. And it's a direction I'm happy to see them finally embrace, because I feel like they were pretty against that for a long time. Because I mean, the spotlight system was pretty opposite of that. Spotlights were trading. They said, all right, you're getting more cards, but you're trading away agency to get those more cards. And I think they are in agreement that, players, I think, are going to respond more positively to more easily being able to get the cards they want to play with most, rather than ending up with, more cards on paper, but probably not as many of the cards they're really the most excited to play with. And also, there's just a lower barrier to entry with this. I can give someone a path to becoming a snap player that I couldn't really give them before. So that's really my favorite thing about what they're doing here. I'm really hoping, and we'll probably talk about it next episode when hopefully Blue's feeling a bit better and joins us back, because Blue's taken a bit of a break from the game in the last month or two, or however long it's been. And so he's going to be our kind of our guinea pig.
Yeah.
He's going to get the full experience of, okay, I took a break from Marvel Snap for a while, and now I'm coming back to the game, and we're going to see what that experience is like for a returning player, someone who was very engaged with the game, took some time off. How does that experience work for them? So it's going to be pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, that was a lot to go over. What do you guys think about the whole the pack stuff? Any thoughts or hopes or just anything?
I mean, there's been select cards that I haven't purchased just because, excuse me, I think I've had to kind of hoard my keys, and then you get selective, right? It's like, well, should I get this? Should I not get this? And it's been frustrating with this one card a week sort of system, where if I choose to not get one and then later it ends up being good, it's like, oh, I wish that I wouldn't have skipped that. I wonder when that's going to be available again.
Hydra Bob, right? Like that was like such a Hydra Bob and US Agent were great examples of that. That was one of the big flaws of the Spotlight system, is it had this FOMO where if you missed getting the card right away, there wasn't a good opportunity to get it again unless you had a pile of tokens lying around. And that could be frustrating, especially when that clashes with the balance of the game, where, Hydra Bob wasn't very good when he came out because Arsham was meta. He was a 1/4, just it wasn't his time. He got buffed right before he left the thing. Then a month or two later, Arsham's nerfed, the meta has changed. All of a sudden, Hydra Bob's the best 1-drop in the game. And a lot of people end up feeling frustrated because they made the correct decision at the time to not use resources on this card that everyone said wasn't very good. And then all of a sudden, he's really good. And, as a content person, it's like sometimes you see people giving us flack for that. And it's like, we can't predict the future. All we can do is give you the what's going on in the moment. But like, it's kind of out of our hands. And I think that was a pretty big pain point of the old system. And it's a shame because I think it's great the game is able to balance stuff the way they do and bring up cards that are weaker. Like Infinity Ultron could have been one of these cards where, if it got buffed after it left the Spotlight cache and it suddenly became a meta thing, you have that whole experience over again. So I think that is one thing the Spotlights did that was kind of frustrating for a lot of players. And I'm glad that with the new system, everything's token based. If you don't get a card the week it comes out because it doesn't look very good, and then 3 weeks later the card's pretty good, well, you don't have to wait 5 months for it to reappear in Spotlights. You can just get it when you're up to 6K tokens, which will happen a lot more than it used to.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's good. It's harder for me to relate to some of the people because I'm collection complete, but it's like, even with that, they've kind of improved that too. Because I mean, you mentioned
Yes.
it earlier. It's when your biggest fear was, and I think everybody calls it something different, but I called it vacationing at the Four Keys, um, and so it was like and when you would get that, it was a horrible feeling because yeah, you're just pulling variants and they might even be cards you don't like or play
Mhm.
with to get the new card. So. And I know, the other thing I'm happy for too is, obviously zombies, people like yourself that stream the game, that's not something you want to necessarily go through either. So, for people like myself, it's going to be better as well because that you're getting a pretty good rate on that new card, that you're not going to have to go fishing for it and stuff like that. And obviously, like you had mentioned, for people like Blutrane and others like that are that want to take some time off, you shouldn't be punished if you get frustrated
Mhm.
or if you just can't do it. Things happen in life, and
Yeah, it's
there's
healthy to
times
take a
where
break sometimes, like
100%. Yep.
and the old system felt like it really punished you for stepping away from the game.
Yep.
And it made it hard to come back, and then people just don't come back, and it's unfortunate because a lot of those people do like the game. A lot of them want
Hmm.
to give it another shot and come back, and it's just like the game needs to give them a path to do that, and it hasn't for the longest time. And it feels like what they're doing with tokens and packs is them trying to be like, hey, this is you're gonna have a real path to getting back towards like playing the game again. We don't know this exactly what this entails, but there was a little hint that maybe we're gonna be there. There might be a little surprise in the inbox on pack release day. So they haven't specified what it is, but I don't think it takes too much speculation to be like, huh, I wonder if they're gonna give people a free pack or something.
Hmm.
So
Hey, that'd be
I think
cool.
something like that is a good way to just kind of give people an excuse to give the game another shot. And as someone who has always been pretty critical of the acquisition system, I'm pretty happy with the majority of things going on with packs. I think there are, a few smaller things that I would like to see changed or improved, but there's much more for me to get excited about with packs than stuff I'm like worried about with them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Um, the other thing that's coming along with packs is more card releases. They said they're going to be doing more new cards, and I think most of those are going to be Series 4. I don't know if they've specified exactly. I think they did, but it's hard to remember. But they are going to be adding more cards into the game, starting with I think next season. Although we don't know like what those cards are going to be,
The
but
Sorcerer's Month. And I think
mhm.
if you look at the data mines for that, I went through just to physically see because I was excited about that too. And well, I counted, now I could be wrong, but I counted 8 cards
Yeah,
that
they
were
have a lot.
coming.
The X-Men season
Yeah.
too. I think X-Men's next month. I think the Sorcerer is the one after.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
but they have that in the X-Men season 2 where it's there are a lot more than just the 4 or 5 new cards in the season pass, and
Yep.
a bunch of them weren't in spotlights that were data mined. So I assume those are going to be new Series 4 releases. Some of them will
Yep.
probably come through an event. Maybe they bring back Sanctum and there are another 3 Series 4 cards in there to earn, which would be cool.
Yep.
But they said some of them are going to be exclusive to buying it with the tokens or getting them in the pack. And I'm pretty excited about that because one thing that's always been a little bit of a criticism for me is I like that Snap gives you something new to do every week, but it's always one thing I miss about traditional card games is sure you have longer time between releases, but when a new set comes out, there's so many different things to explore. Like in Hearthstone, there are 11 classes or whatever, and they all are doing different things and they're new archetypes and new mechanics and stuff. It's hard to do that in a one card a week cycle. Like
Hmm.
they can do it sometimes. They can make a Thanos or a High Evo or these cards that are like a deck in a box where they're kind of greater than just being one card you throw in a deck. But it's hard to do that a lot. And that's something I've always missed. And also it's a little annoying because everyone's playing the new card on new card day. So they're either
Mhm.
playing it or they're playing a
Yep.
counter to it or both. And like a lot of the times it's hard to get a read on a new card until like the week after it comes out, when like people start playing, the either other new stuff or some of the old stuff they were playing before the new card came out. So that's one thing I'm really looking forward to with more season or more Series 4 cards is, one, they'll be, more accessible because they're cheaper. And some of them are through events. But two, I think just having more cards release, it'll give more people different things to do. Like maybe I mean, we saw this with Sanctum kind of, right? Where like some people were trying out Uncle Ben stuff because he was the first card they got. Other people were trying out Gorgon or Laufey. I think that's really good for the game to give people, to not have everyone necessarily jamming the same card or the same counters to the new card. So I'm looking forward to them having more Series 4 releases, because I think it just gives us more to do in the game. And if you look at the history of Series 4 releases, except for Sanctum, most of the other event cards have not been very good. They've been very fringe. Some of them have interesting designs. I was excited for the first Ghost Rider, but I think that card's kind of like Dakin, where it released, people tried it out, it didn't really seem that great in most decks, but you give it one or two more support cards a little later down the line, and all of a sudden it's in a very strong deck, like what happened with Dakin and Discard. Dakin didn't get played for like a year in most decks, and then all of a sudden now he's a core part of a very strong archetype.
Yep.
And I think that'll happen to first Ghost Rider and maybe some of these other niche cards. But I think we're going to see a lot of these Series 4 cards will be a little bit more niche. And I think that's good because it makes it so, like, a great example is Tombstone. I don't know if you guys have seen Tombstone. He's essentially Miles Morales for Destroy. He's a 4/6, but he costs 1 if a card was destroyed last turn. And so if you're a Destroy player, you might be like, oh, that's great. I wanted a new thing to explore in my Lady Deathstrike Destroy deck. But if you're not a Destroy player, you're not going to feel like you need to pick up this card because it's just not something you're going to play with. So I think giving more niche options of these cheaper cards, so you can be like, okay, I really like this one, I'm going to go with that, but I don't feel like I need all of them. And you don't get that FOMO of like, oh no, I better pick this up because it could become meta. Like most of the Series 4 releases have not been very meta. I think the only exceptions have been the Sanctum cards, and even those on release weren't very good initially, but they kind of came into their own over time. Uncle Ben found a home in Scream. Laufey found one in Ajax. Gorgon's been a bit of a tech card against like Thanos and Victoria Hand stuff. And those ones, they're not must-own cards, but if you enjoy one of those type of things, it's a solid one to pick up. And it's easier to do that because all you have to do is either play the event or get it for the cheaper token price or in one of these Series 4 packs. So I'm pretty excited about them releasing more new Series 4 cards because I think it's going to just improve the gameplay experience. And I know some people have been a little concerned because, I mean, I get it. Not like there's some people, they have, we've been told like, oh, things are going to improve, and then things don't always go like how they're expected to go. So I get skepticism. I've been very skeptical of some, talked about improvements in the past, but from everything I've seen, I'm pretty on board with the changes they're making to acquisition here. As someone who has been pretty critical of a lot of their other acquisition methods in the past, I think there's a lot to like here, and I'm hoping it goes over well and does give people a bit more of a solid entry point to the game or returning point. Like the biggest question mark to me is I'm curious how this impacts the new player experience for Series 3.
Yeah.
Because that's something we are all very far removed from, right? Like we finished that Series 3 journey a couple months into Snap releasing. And that's something, anyone who does content on the game is just very far removed from. So I'm kind of curious to see how that goes. But I'm pretty happy that they found a way for there to be something to like in this system for all different kinds of players. Like if you're like me or Joe and you have all the cards, there's something to like with packs, because if you have all the cards, you can just buy the new pack for 5K tokens instead of 6K. You get the new card guaranteed. You get some bonus kickback goodies on top of it. And so it feels like it's making it a little bit more less expensive to keep up with new releases, and hopefully make it more attainable for people who aren't collection to complete to get there if they want to eventually. But also for new players and returning players, there's a very real path to getting the cards you want a lot faster than you could get in the Spotlight system. So I think they found a way to appease all the different groups in different ways. I think that's kind of a hard thing to do. And that's something I think Snap has kind of struggled to do in the past. So I'm really hoping it works out, because Snap's a really great game. I like so many things about it, and it's always frustrated me how hard it is to recommend someone to get into it or come back to it, because I know it's kind of like climbing a mountain. It's not an easy thing to do. They make it pretty hard. So I'm hoping that this acquisition system really gives people a chance at either becoming a new player or a returning player, and there's
Yeah.
a lot less pain points to doing that. And
Yeah, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
so here's hoping, ending on a positive note here, and we'll see how it goes. Drops Tuesday. I guess one last reminder is if you are interested in the final Spotlight week of Hydra Stomper, Madam Web, and Aranya, don't update your game right away, because you can still get it through the Spotlight system. And I've had a lot of people ask, hey, is it worth going for that week? Should I update and use the packs instead? The simple advice I can give is, if you're getting 2 or more cards that you want to play out of the week, don't update, wait for the Spotlight, get those 2 or more cards. If you're only going for the new card, just update your game and buy it with tokens or use the pack, depending on your collection and the best way to do that for you. But that's something to be aware of if you're looking to pick up the move cards in the final Spotlight week. But I think that's going to wrap things up for us. I do want to give a big thanks to Joe for joining us. Do you want to let people know where they can find you and your show and all that kind of good stuff before we
please
sign
do.
off?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again for having me. Like I said, I love the show, and it was fun being here. Yeah. So Snap Decisions pretty much every on, if you still buy that one, on Blue Sky. It's Snap Decisions as well. I have my own Discord. I'm also part of the Snap Judgments League Discord as well. And I do a podcast every Tuesday that comes out primarily on audio now for the most part, but it's on all the audio platforms. And then I will also have various guests on who I've had zombies on my show already, and I'm sure I'll have them again sometime. And of course, Nate as well. I would I'll be getting him on the show. Blutrane's been on too. So I'll have a lot of Snap creators, people that just play Snap and things like that, which I really enjoy just talking to other people who play the game, and we chat about all kind of things, whether it's comic books or whether it's movies or whether it's Snap. Yeah, that's what you can get from me. I'm an old dude who's playing a game that I love, and most of it I love because I grew up on comic books, and that's kind of why I love the game. So yeah, check it out. Like I said, I do usually one show every week, maybe 2. If there's an OTA, I'll do like a little OTA report and
Nice.
stuff like that. Yeah, yep.
Cool.
But
And we'll try and
Excellent.
throw links and stuff in the description.
Definitely.
Check it out.
awesome. Thank you.
But yeah, that's gonna wrap it for episode 48. Closing in on the big 5-0 soon enough.
Right.
So that's exciting. See if we can do something a little fun or special for that. Maybe I'll throw on the Daredevil cosplay or something.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
That would be fun. But yeah, it was fun. Great talking with you guys. Always a fun time. We'll probably try and do one in like 2 weeks or so if the schedules
we
are
should. Yeah.
working out, because I definitely want to follow up on the pack stuff, and we can talk about how things go, and we can hear about Blue's experience as a returning player and all that fun stuff. So stay tuned. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a sub and a like and follow on any of the audio platforms if you enjoyed it. And if you're here on the Twitch side, and I know we're doing this on my channel, which normally we do it on the Born to Be wild one, check out the links there. If you enjoyed the show and maybe it was your first time watching, you can find out or you can keep up with it there.
Yeah,
But-
thanks everybody for hanging out. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, fun stuff. Great discussion. Have a good rest of your day or evening, and if nothing else, keep it Cosmo.
Keep it Cosmo.
Keep it Cosmo.
Enough said, bub.